When you think about the story going forward, it's going to be at full self-driving penetration, autonomous, and what I've ultimately
So
believe.
you believe that stuff?
Oh, how about this? I think.
Paul, let us be respectful. You wouldn't talk to Gene Munster that
No,
way.
I would not. You're right.
So look, I think over the next 4 to 5 years, there will be a point where Sweeney is getting into a cybercab, no driver, taking him to play golf. That will happen next 4 to 5 years.
Dan Ives predicts that within the next 4 to 5 years, autonomous vehicles will become common, with Tesla leading the way due to its advancements in self-driving technology. He believes that regulatory changes will significantly boost Tesla's value, potentially making it a trillion-dollar company. Ives also shares a personal story about betting that his daughter, now 8, will never need a driver's license, reflecting his belief in the inevitable rise of autonomous vehicles. Despite Tesla's full self-driving system not being perfect, he sees it as a key driver of future growth and road safety. He compares Tesla's future to Apple's transformation, emphasizing that, like Apple's services, Tesla's autonomous driving technology will drive long-term value. Ives also touches on the growing influence of companies like Broadcom in the tech sector, noting their strategic partnerships with firms like Apple.
Right. I mean, if that happens, that is a whole new game.
But that's our view. And again, the whole issue is that between the Musk-Trump bromance, the reason it's so important for the stock is because now regulation in this country is going to rapidly change in terms of autonomous. And that, we believe, $1 trillion alone for Tesla's valuation just based on autonomous.
Gene, get us up to speed on this, and you come at this from Loop Ventures and Deepwater Asset, where you've really dived into the entrepreneurial part of technology. Do you buy the Ives story?
Caps. Now take a look at Nvidia versus the eco-weight semis. Within this sector, it seems to me there's a bit of a seesaw trade going on, playing the dispersion of Nvidia relative to the rest, especially if you look since Nvidia reported earnings November 20th. You see, Nvidia's kind of done not much of anything and actually had a little bit of a downward tilt here, while you have the average semiconductor stock going up. Obviously, Nvidia is the big known growth story, the quality in the group, and you see how it's essentially almost trading reverse of the rest of the sector. We'll see if that holds up. Sometimes this is just about crowded positioning, kind of rectifying itself in the short term, guys.
You're choosing IBM over Google. You're choosing IBM over NVIDIA.
Well, I think NVIDIA, right? So NVIDIA's top clients are its top competitors. So that the writing on the wall is there. Not that I don't think it can go higher, but I think that it's probably run its course right now and needs to pull back.
Thank you. I'll ask you this question then on the back of that. Who should be worried about this? I saw in your notes, probably not NVIDIA, not AMD yet, but somebody has to be.
Yeah, I think, there's some of the other quantum companies, there's private companies on that side, but I think on the public side, the worries are probably, because this is so far away. I think the piece that the rest of the Mag 7 needs to be contemplating here, and NVIDIA needs to be thinking about, is just what are they doing to have some sort of position within quantum computing. It's theory right now, but I think you have to pursue that theory, similar to when aviation was theory before we got flight. I mean, all of these things go from projects from the lab. And so I would say the potential losers are the companies that aren't doing that. And I think Google is standing alone right now within the Mag 7 in terms of their investments in quantum.
Gene Munster, Deepwater Asset Manager. We're just showing the chart of NVIDIA. And remember, NVIDIA fell yesterday on the back of the news of the China investigation. So it's interesting that it doesn't, it can't catch a bid today. And then we have this interesting supercomputing news.
Well, it certainly, this is a trade today about tomorrow. Nvidia arguably could be, yesterday's trade today. I don't know, but I would look at the semiconductor space. You cannot single out Nvidia. I would look at semis, which today hit another important relative value underperformance to the S&P, which takes you almost all the way back to February of this year, which was when they were going to the moon. So it's again, a relative value chart looks a little bit like a reverse head and shoulders on the way down.
Did you write last week that maybe there's some earlier news on Rubin, which would allow you to build in some better numbers for 25?
Well, so we all know about Blackwell, and then the next chip's Rubin. In between, there's a chip called Blackwell Ultra, which is going to potentially boost the back half of next calendar year. However, NVIDIA does seem to be asking their supply chain and their memory makers, hey, can you pull this thing up? We want to get Rubin out a little sooner. and the evidence is just stacking up. Now, of course, these launches are very complex. These are very complex chips, but it's good to see them wanting to keep to that one-year cadence. And if Rubin does get pulled up in 2026 calendar, you could see faster growth in the hundreds of basis points we said, and then that helps. There's a lot of folks right now going, Ben, I get it. Next year's growing 50% plus. What about 26? Well, these are the types of things. If we get 30% growth instead of 20, that stock's going much higher.
So, Gene, kick things off. What do you think we learned this week?
Kelly, I think we learned a lot. I think we learned a lot in terms of the sustainability of the AI infrastructure trade. Of course, Broadcom focuses on custom silicon, which is different than Nvidia's GPUs, but the storyline that this is going to run out, the AI infrastructure is going to dramatically slow next year, essentially a strong data point that this is going to be growing faster for longer. And just want to quickly put some numbers around that, is that if you take Broadcom's 2027 guidance, which it's remarkable that they're stretching out that far, but 2027 guidance, it basically implies about 60% annual growth. Right now, investors are expecting Nvidia to grow in 2026 at around 21%. And so I think that that's one piece that we learned this week. The second is that the pace of AI innovation continues to be rapid, of course, with Google coming out with Gemini 2.0. And so this is a big week for AI.
Steve, would you differentiate for us between NVIDIA on the one hand and Broadcom on the other, and why people have become so currently excited with Broadcom? The numbers, the earnings, the report this week, good.
Right.
Not kick-ass great, but
well, there was
good.
also this report earlier in the week that Broadcom's working with Apple now to help them do some artificial intelligence chips. So it's a different, yes, to your point, NVIDIA makes those GPUs, they're more expensive, but Broadcom has become this player that companies go to. Google, by the way, is using Broadcom to make their artificial intelligence chips as well. Now, reportedly, Apple is getting in on that as well. That makes it really exciting. And these are, of course, the ones that run in the servers for training their AI models. What's really interesting about Apple, at least what we've learned so far, what they've publicly disclosed so far, they've been using these alternative chips to train their Apple Intelligence stuff. They've been using chips from Amazon. They've been using chips from Google, which, by the way, like I said, Broadcom has a hand in helping make those. What they haven't been doing is running out there like Microsoft and Meta have been doing, and Google to some extent, buying up gobs and gobs and gobs of NVIDIA chips and putting them in a server farm somewhere and training their AI models. They've been renting these other alternative chips. That doesn't mean they're not using NVIDIA, but it does mean, at least what they publicly disclosed, they're looking at these alternatives, and it's pretty impressive. They've been able to do this and launch Apple Intelligence in the way they have without spending as much as some of the rivals have.
100%. I mean, I think that the reality is that if you're born today, there's no chance that you're going to, born in the U.S. today, there's no chance that you're going to ever need a driver's license. If you're 8 years old today, there's no chance. And
or Gene, talk about what you talk about, like with your kid, like how you always say, like your kid, like will your kid, yeah.
So I have a daughter. She's 8 years old, and I had a bet just after she was born that she would never have a driver's license. And a couple of weeks ago, I tried the latest version of Tesla FSD for 20 minutes and had a couple interventions. It's not there yet, but it is remarkable the progress that's making. And I think that the whole conversation around Tesla, very few people are actually experiencing how far along they are. And then you layer on top of that the fact that humans are becoming worse drivers. 40,000 plus people lose their lives a year in auto accidents in the US alone. And then you layer on top of that what GM Cruise announced this week, basically backing off from autonomy. It just leaves this wide open opportunity for Tesla to really be, I think, one of the two key players within autonomy. And so I think that that's not fully appreciated in shares of Tesla.
So Dan, when we think about the Tesla story, I mean, part of me, the cynic in me, thinks Elon Musk is trying to get me to take my focus away from bending metal, which is a low margin business, competitive business, to other bets, to use a term. But you think those other bets, like autonomous driving, robo-taxis, are real?
But I view it similar to, like, as Keen's talked about for a decade. It's like with Apple, but originally, and Gene's talked about it as well, you just looked at Apple as a hardware player, smartphone.
Yep.
But what's been the key of the valuation, why it's going to be the first one in the $4 trillion market club? It's because of services. It's because of, So when you think about Tesla, I would compare autonomous, the software, FSD, to Apple services relative to that Cupertino story. That's why it's so important. 7 million vehicles out there. You'll have 10 million vehicles over the next year or two. And even when you look at Waymo, which is the Google Play, those are $200,000 cars.
I got to get this in. Yesterday we had great coverage. Thank you to our team for linking it up with the president-elect at the New York Stock Exchange. The billionaire of the United States was not there. I answer the critics of Elon Musk, Dan Ives. Is he getting taxpayer support for all of his ventures? Is he getting a free ride off the back of the American taxpayer?
I disagree. I would argue you're talking about he made a bet for the ages with Trump and essentially iced out, if you look at last administrations when it comes to Biden administration, especially around EVs. And now you're going to really see him doubling down. And within the Beltway, there's going to be major changes, and when that knock at the door happens, it's must.
Dan Ives predicts that autonomous vehicles will become mainstream in the next 4 to 5 years, with Tesla leading the charge. He believes regulatory changes will drive Tesla's valuation into the trillion-dollar range, similar to Apple's growth through its services. Ives also highlights the increasing likelihood that future generations won't need driver's licenses, emphasizing the growing shift towards self-driving cars. He also discusses the role of companies like Broadcom in the AI and semiconductor industries, noting their strategic partnerships with tech giants like Apple. This evolving tech landscape presents significant opportunities for both Tesla and companies in the semiconductor sector. How will regulatory changes affect Tesla's market position? What is Broadcom's potential in shaping the future of AI and semiconductors?